Commissioners meeting Wednesday, September 4th. Welcome everybody back. We didn't meet last week. And all commissioners are present. First is public comment. If I write it down, nothing today. Okay. Nobody else on, so I'm going to move forward with elected officials and department heads. Doug, I'm going to start with you. Do you have anything to bring forward?
No, nothing today. Just listening in. Thanks.
Alrighty. Cheryl, you have some items on here, but do you have anything else to offer? Okay, you're muted.
I don't. At some point, and probably next week, I'll present some kind of analysis of our insurance fund, just so, I mean, Chris and I will be meeting with the Richards Group in, I don't know, about a month. But I think I've indicated that we've had some increasingly high claims that are going to, I'm certain, impact whatever we get for a renewal for 2025. So I'll present an analysis of 2023 versus 2024, where we're at.
Okay, thank you. Catherine's here, but you're presenting in.
But may I just officially introduce Aaron before he presents?
I was going to say, do you have anything? Yes.
Yes,
Go ahead.
please. So this is Aaron Newman, our new maintenance director. As you may recall, Bruce had retired in April. Aaron started up in April. He will be presenting the first report from his time since April till now. But before he officially reported, I thought I might as well introduce him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the former commissioner. Oh, nice to meet you.
You know me.
I do.
Okay. Davis.
Everybody.
Bob England.
And you might as well introduce yourself too.
Hi, I'm Claudia Stewart.
Oh, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right. And on, you've got Jack, you got Cheryl that I think you know too, and then Doug is from the DOC. And just so you know, when it's time, Bruce used to do it in a little bit of an Irish jig when he would present.
Oh, boy. I don't know if I can do that. You want me to try?
Yeah, the dancing, but playing the bagpipe at the same time, and it's just pretty.
God bless him.
All right, so we're gonna start off with the master agenda item, number 1196, signing of the MS-45 form. Cheryl, action, Trombley will be discussing this action to have the commission review and sign MS-45 form. Cheryl.
This is the DRA form that needs to be signed and submitted annually to go along with all the different DRA reports that ultimately allows for the DRA to set our tax rate. So this is, it's just presenting our financial and 2023 budget and actuals. So I would like for at least the majority of the commissioners to sign it. And
It's
then-
happening, it's happening as we speak.
Perfect.
So while that goes on and Bob will sign it next, then.
Unless they have any questions.
And actually, I have a quick question. There's only a spot on the front
Just for
to
the
have the clerk sign it.
Oh, okay. Then that's all that needs to sign it.
Great.
You want to look at it, Bob?
Thank you.
Okay, then I'm gonna move on to the next item. Master agenda item number 1197, TAN bid award. Cheryl Trombley and Chuck Weed, our treasurer, county treasurer, is here. Action expected to update the commissioners on the tax anticipation note TAN bid results. Cheryl.
So I'm actually looking not only for to report out, I'm kind of looking for an action for them to vote on it. I will say that I am waiting for an update from M&T. And the reason being is M&T, they sent over their bid yesterday, and Davis has copies of it if he's able to put it up on the screen. Are you able to put it up on the screen?
Yeah, I'm wondering, I think I should probably just put it on here, give it to you guys directly on the laptop so you don't have to look from so far away.
Can't put it on the big screen, can you?
No, it's not.
I will read to you.
Right now.
So essentially, we received two bids. Mascoma bid 6.70 fixed. Both of these are lines of credits for up to 9,750,000 so that we could keep it under and being bank qualified. number one. Number two, with it being a line of credit, it does not mean that we are going to be drawing down $10 million on day one and spending 6.70. Obviously, this is a terrible rate, but this is the times that we're in. So I'll be managing drawing down only what we need as we need it, and then paying back as we can, because some tax payments from our municipalities, and that can help pay it down. The difference is M&T quoted 6.74 fixed. However, their where is it? Where does it say that? They basically present it as a taxable versus a non-taxable, because this should be tax exempt. So I need to find out from them if the 6.74 is because of them quoting a taxable rate versus a tax exempt rate, and if that has any bearing on a change in the rate. So if it all stands that this is 6.74 versus 6.7, I don't see, I mean, I would imagine we would go with Mascoma. They're the ones that lent us the money last year. There was an alternative rate that M&T offered, which was daily SOFR plus 154 basis points. The daily SOFR at the moment is, I believe, that would bring it to 6.84 versus the 6.74, but it's variable. As I was hearing you all speak, and it is true that there's conversation that rates could come down, but we're going to need this money for like only about 3 months, and I'm not certain that the rates are going to come down. No doubt it's a risk that perhaps a variable rate, we could find that the SOFR ends up coming down a month from now, and then the plus 154 basis points makes it lower than the 6.7, but it may never come down.
Cheryl,
Yes.
it's Chuck, and I talked the bad news about the high interest rate, but I wondered if ever, and I'm still really naive, only being 81, I've got some time to become less naive. But can you put a contract or a contingency in the contract once the rates go down by the Fed, which is inevitable?
I mean, I could always ask, but I don't think so. I mean, I think that's what they're doing, is they're locking something in so that they're getting it. And that's kind of the way M&T has presented it, by presenting that option A, which is a daily SOFR, which the current SOFR, which is secured overnight financing rate, is currently at 5.31. So if you take the 5.31 and you add the 154 basis points, it is 6.85. So essentially M&T has built something in that could potentially fluctuate if the rates start coming down. But I mean, I could start the presentation of how it was bid all over again, but I'm not sure if they would, and I could, I guess, ask both of them, but I think M&T would say that that's basically what they're presenting there for their interest rate option A.
Cheryl, do you have a sense from a cash flow point of view, how much of the money we'll actually need?
Well, so from a cash flow point of view, I mean, we could potentially need all of it. What I do though, is I manage the health insurance fund by not transferring over all the county obligation. So we could potentially, maybe only need 7 million of it versus the full almost 10 million. And I just have to keep an eye on the insurance claims, but that's what I've done in the past. Is from a standpoint of a cash flow, I can show that we could use the full 10 million, but I also manage other funds that the general fund initially holds on to the fund. I also can transfer capital reserves out of capital reserves. to the general fund. There's certain funds that I can move money into the general fund that's legitimate, and there's other funds that I can hold off on moving.
Well, at
So-
at the end of the day, we're still only talking about 3 months, and you know, the interest rate probably is going to come down, but it's not going to drop, you know, by 50%. And so marginally, the difference in the interest rates probably isn't going to mean that much, given the duration of the loan and the expectation of some softening of the interest rate, I would say.
Right.
What is the worst case, amount of interest that we end up paying?
I would say that overall that we probably wouldn't spend over $100,000 for this, because I mean, if I sat there, I mean, I know that I'm gonna take a good chunk of it, probably about $3 million at the beginning of October, because that's when our bond payments are due for the jail and the nursing home. And so that's really the whole timing of this. So for the duration of that, that's about $33,000. But then I'm gonna just be, you know, bringing in like $500,000 to $1 million at a time over the course. So I feel like we'd be under 100,000. We have a $200,000 budget, but and interest income has been incredible. So on the flip side of all of this, so it's really managing and drawing it down only when I need it, so that it just is, we're only paying on it for a shorter period of time.
Cheryl, if somebody's just listening into this, they're wondering why we have to do this. Can you just quickly just have people understand that? I mean, it has to do with December 17th a lot, doesn't it?
Yes. So what happens is we collect taxes. Our budget is made up of multiple revenue sources. And a significant part of our budget is made up of the collection of taxes to support the services. The statute for collecting county taxes for all counties in the state of New Hampshire is December 17th of every year. So we basically are working on an operating budget that the taxes, that chunk of the revenue, which is the taxes, don't come in until the very end of the year. So the word TAN stands for tax anticipation note. And we, in the past, used to borrow much earlier in like April, May of each year. And when we borrowed at that time, it would be a lump sum that we would just borrow right up front. We'd have the money in our hands. We'd pay interest for the duration, the number of days, 280 days or whatever. And then from there, we would take that chunk of money and invest it based on our cash flow needs. In the past several years, we have not had to borrow that early. So what we have been doing in turn is, because we only need the money for a couple months, we look for a line of credit. So we don't have the opportunity to invest the money because we're not going to draw it down to turn around and invest it. But we draw it down just when we need it. And this is, last year our rate was 4.70. This year, the lowest rate we've gotten quoted is 6.70, but that's just what's going on with the rates.
Do you remember how much we paid in interest charges last year?
Yep, I can look that up. Hold on.
Should I play the Jeopardy theme while we're waiting?
We paid $42,107 last year.
Okay, at 4%. Yeah. So, yeah, we're still talking just, maybe a month and a half of any meaningful increase in interest charges, really.
Yeah.
It's not going to come down but 0.5%, maybe, if that. That would be a pretty dramatic reduction in interest rate at the federal level.
if I was just to extrapolate what we paid last year from a 4.7 to a 6.7, we would potentially pay about $63,000 in interest expense versus the 42 last year.
Right.
So the motion you're looking for is for M&T, or are you putting a asterisk next to that until you find out what the information is, and if it comes back different, you go with Muskoma? What's the?
So I guess what I would like to recommend is that I've let M&T know that this is coming before you this morning for a vote. I've asked for clarification. And I feel like if we don't get the clarification before the end, I mean, this is up to you. If you want to, I'm hoping that I get a response back to them before the end of the meeting. But otherwise, I don't know why we wouldn't go with Muskoma at 6.7. Because if their rate is correct at 6.74, and it was just a typo in the bid to say taxable versus tax exempt, then, but I don't know which way you want to go. If you want to be able to at least hold off to get the response from Muskoma and even authorize the lowest bidder.
I'm a little confused. I thought the M&T was 6.74 fixed.
It is
Okay, and what's Mascoma?
6.7
Uh,
fixed.
Fixed.
Yep.
and is our primary banking relationship with Mascoma?
No,
Oh.
our primary is with M&T.
Right.
And so does the relationship, I mean, the minor difference in the rates, is there any value to maintaining the banking relationship in an integrated way rather than spinning it off for 0.4%?
I thought about that as well.
I mean, we rely on our banking relationships to be smooth and easy and workable, and we put the banking out to bid, and I don't know, we've been there 2 years, 2 or 3 years.
We've been with M&T for a while because it used to be People's prior to that.
Oh,
and
right.
Transition.
You know, I'm kind of inclined to stay with M&T, subject to it just being a scrivener's error that it says a taxable versus non-taxed.
Yeah. And it's not gonna, I mean, if anything, it's gonna reduce the rate from 6.74, but I feel like the 6.74 is probably what it is, and they should have said non-taxed.
I think you're right. And there's no statutory requisite for us to take the lowest one, only the lowest reasonable one, and I think our banking relationship is reasonable.
Yeah.
Given it's a really de minimis difference between the two.
Yeah. And I did actually think about that as well. I mean, it is very minor. Depending again, the drawdown of it, we could potentially end up spending maybe about $3,000 more in interest expense. They're not to say that these would be, a couple $1,000, but there is a value every time I have to go on and do like a wire transfer from Muskoma back to M&T to bring the money in. It's just a different process.
And would M&T have similar charges for accessing the line of credit there?
Well, this is just because I would just be doing internal transfers.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it's just that I would have to actually do a transaction that moved the money from Muskoma to M&T versus the money just being right at M&T.
Right.
And
right.
Cheryl, it's Chuck. Didn't Muskoma make some really solid initiatives to try to encourage, for instance, county employees and offer programs? And I'm wondering if there's a possibility of harming a bureaucratic relationship with M&T just to keep this good feeling going on with Muskoma.
Mascoma has provided a good program for our employees to take advantage of loans and, but they offer that to other companies. We do have a chunk of money with them as well. We provide investments with them as well. So I mean, really all the banks would be anxious for our business. I think if anything, TD and Citizens didn't choose to quote. They didn't give me any reason why they didn't quote, but it may be because if we don't have our banking relationship with them, they're not interested in taking care of us.
And it's a lot of work to change banking relations.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's not to say that it won't be something we'll look into, but
Right.
this department needs to get past this payroll implementation before we start taking on a project of
Right.
that magnitude.
Right.
So it
Yeah,
might happen till 2025.
Well, I would make a motion to authorize the line of credit through M&T Bank, maintaining our existing banking relationship.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Wasmac,
Aye.
Commissioner England,
Aye.
and Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Okay. You have your vote there, Cheryl.
All right, thank you.
But you'll just still determine the correct language, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And
All right, I'm gonna move on to master agenda item number 1198, Maplewood Administrative Semi-Annual Report. Catherine Kindup, Nursing Home Administrator, is here to speak to that. Acts expect to receive information report on the last 6 months of operations by the administrator. Catherine.
Okay, so first up, I just want to give feedback on the per diem holiday pickups. So with this past weekend being the Labor Day, we had 10 per diem staff that picked up with the new incentive versus 4 last year. This is the second holiday that we are seeing our staff picking up the per diem. So it's beneficial to mostly the residents because it's the staff that they know, but I'd advocate we continue this on. I think we're halfway through the project that we asked you for, and Cheryl, I don't know, do you have any additional comments on the per diem pickups? No. I just wanted to report back on you. I said that after each holiday, I would let you know what happened. So again, favorable. In terms of the last 6 months, the biggest issue continues to be, I feel like I'm gonna have a back to you.
No, that's okay, don't worry, I can hear
She'll tell us later on.
exactly.
Please, just,
Thank you,
everyone's this way, so.
I know, it's all right, thank you.
The biggest issue in these past 6 months is that the federal government, CMS, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, did go ahead and authenticate the ruling for the minimum staffing requirement. The first condition went into play on August 8th, where we had to have the facility assessment updated and completed. We had to go through a process. Commissioner England was part of that process starting in, I think it was June that we had met. And then we made sure that we completed the facility assessment. The biggest thing that we need to be focused on for the next component is that we have to, in our budget, include planning and recruiting and retaining of staff. So just an overview, the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services Medicaid and Medicare Services who govern nursing homes, they pay us, they make our lives really fun. They have made a requirement for minimum staffing. There's several components, some of which we meet, but the two that we do not meet is we have to have an RN present in building 24/7. And we have not been able to recruit or retain an RN for the 11 to 7. I want to say it's approximately going on 5 years. Prior to that, in my whole 25 years prior, we always had an RN in the building 24/7, always, always, always. 5 years ago, when our night nurse moved to Maine, we have never been able to fill that position with an RN. So that's the first component. The second component that we don't meet is the 0.55 hours per resident day of an RN. That has to occur 7 days a week, and on weekends, we fall short of that. we have to achieve that 0.45 hours present day, and we have to achieve an RN in the building 24/7. The first marker hits us in 2026. So we have put a lot of efforts, the director of nursing, myself, and the HR department, and we have put forth a budget proposal for 2025 to increase our recruitment and retainment, in particular of RNs. If I go back in 2023 for 2024 budget, we did ask for a significant increase in our RN base wage. And we were met partway, and that was implemented in April, just in time to retain a nurse. We actually had an RN give us notice because they were offered a higher rate elsewhere. We were able to show her with the new budget number where she would come in, so she rescinded it and we retained one RN, and since then we've actually hired one RN. That's it, we still need quite a bit more. In our recruiting and retainment program, you're gonna see us through this budget proposal, that we want to really focus on a couple of our LPNs to support them to achieve their RN. We need to grow from within. We're not finding RNs coming at us. So once again, I'm gonna ask for support to increase the RN base wage to be competitive. We're still off by approximately $5 an hour. And we are also gonna put in some really robust numbers to get and support a couple of LPNs through their schooling to become an RN and to help us achieve the 24/7 RN. So our plan is focused on a couple of our LPNs to recruit and grow from.
So the problem is that the competition for RNs is just too great for them to be incentivized to working 11 to 7.
11/7 is well incentivized here at Maplewood.
I mean, but
The problem is,
they don't want it. They want to work during the
No.
day.
I have open RN positions in every single shift. I have 50 LNA positions open. Off the top- 50. I can't tell you off the top of my head. I can't tell you how many RNs, because one of the other challenges is to get the 0.55. I'm too heavily weighted on the LPNs. So I'm also proposing that we keep the same number of FTEs, but we shift more LPNs to RNs to make sure we can hit the 0.55. So RNs don't exist. We didn't make enough people. You know, I use my father's, he was one of 8 kids. He had 4, I had 2. My kids say they're not having kids. There's one of the problems. We paid pretty low. I mean, we tried to increase to a competitive wage last year and it retained 1 nurse and it recruited 1 nurse. At this rate, we're not gonna make it. We've got more nurses that are closer to retirement. We've been trying to bring in a nurse, an RN, from a traveling company for the past year. So we have to look at this seriously through this budget process. We have to make these numbers work. Because otherwise we're just gonna get.
So licensing, is that a big jump or is that a huge effort to go from LPN to RN? Is it a big jump?
My understanding is there's a couple of local tracks that could be approximately a 1-year, like 2-semester program. But I'm not intimately familiar, so I can't give you the details. But it looks like the 2 LPNs that have some interest, one has already started the program. And it looks like if we continue to support her, she could be done by about this time next year. The other one's just looking, so she might start in January if we can support her to do it.
The other problem that you're working against is that and this came from another administrator in the area that said to me, we're not sexy. That nursing homes aren't sexy. They're a calling, they're a passion. They're not the hospital. They're not going into some type of situation where you're, in an emergency room or whatever it may be. That's, aside from financial too, it's just, that's the other thing that you're fighting against, is that when you don't have enough people already and everybody just steals from each other and just continues to, go around like this, man, that really, a lot of times, the only thing you can do and hope that by doing this, they are passionate about working here. And that if we show them commitment to growth, that they stay here and they don't, now that they have the RN, go some other place. But that's just the reality you're facing in this day and age. There's just not enough nurses in the area overall, and we've tried, I believe we've tried every single. And there's always more we can do, but we've continually looked at ways we could entice, and we will continue to do so. But it's just, that's the other problem that I wanted to throw in there, because I was this weekend with somebody that she just said, you know, it's just not sexy. We're not set, I mean, what do you mean? She's like, well, it's like, you know, you go through an RN course, you wanna try the real, what they call the real nursing, and it's like, well, here is, if you're looking at with the acuity level that comes through this door now compared to 10, 15 years ago, it's intense work that we have now.
Well, it's the same with cops. I mean, the new guys, they wanna go to a city with a SWAT team.
Yeah.
Rather than to go to Winchester.
Or even Manchester instead of Keene.
Right.
What's the average age of your RNs now, Catherine?
Close to retirement. We're gonna be hitting a bubble in the next 5 to 10 years, which isn't gonna be pretty, but I'm not gonna have to worry about it.
But you can't retire when you're only 44.
So much older than I look apparently. Okay, let's move to COVID. The nasty COVID keeps rearing its ugly head. We keep seeing surges and outbreaks. We had quite an outbreak starting in June, and what's really interesting is the only metric we can follow, the CDC, all the typical metrics have gone offline. The only metric I have right now is the Keene wastewater. So monitoring it into June, the numbers were nice and low, and by July 1st, it started to spike right around July 1st, but June 24th, we had a resident coughing at the breakfast table and learned 3 days prior had several visitors who didn't either recognize they were sick or didn't call and report. And therefore it spread, and it was on our dementia unit, which is really, really hard to contain when that happens. So we ended up through June and July, we had 28 residents that were sick, and it turned out to be 28 staff that were sick as well. We're still seeing a huge spike in the COVID wastewater in Keene, and even just this week, because Keene State College has moved back, you see another spike. So we're
Pam Taylor, 7312.
we're really high
Pam, 7312.
in the local area for COVID, and our visitors keep coming and sharing it with us. We've got another resident who we just found out this week had a visitor over a few days ago, had another one yesterday where the family has told us they were in to visit the night before, and all 3 of them now are COVID positive. So we're having to monitor that resident. So I think we're just gonna keep having issues, and it's really frustrating, because just to remind you all, healthcare staff in nursing homes, we have to be out 10 days. So it's less about the residents. They're faring pretty well, knock on wood. It's the staff. It decimates our staff really, really quickly. I've got a situation right now I'm monitoring. I've got social work team, unfortunately, with internally had an exposure, had meetings and lunches together, and I'm down to the last 2, which was tough for the week, but this is also voting week, and we must offer our residents the ability to vote. So we did the early ballots, we've got them, and we've got until tomorrow. So as soon as I'm done with this meeting, I've got to double check if I've got any social workers here present to be able to assist our residents in their right to vote. So fun stuff with that. Another thing that happened in this past quarter was CMS, Centers for Medicare Services, has made us to do something called enhanced barrier protection. So in addition to all the usual illnesses, there's this new concept of if somebody has one of those chronic kinds of diagnoses, or they've had they've had a super bug. You've probably heard the word super bug. If somebody's had a super bug in the past, they go on a special list that we keep. And now with enhanced barrier protection, anybody who goes into that room to do specific care has to don additional PPE. So that's something they don't have to be actively infected, but because they've got an MDRO, which means that they had a super bug or something in the past, we have to do a lot of additional PPE. So that's gonna hit our bottom line a little bit, but that's new.
Can I, just two quick questions, if you don't mind? Going back to COVID, you know, when somebody gets that, that lives here, do the doctors automatically or look at Paxlovid and to put them on, and to help minimize the effects?
It's always expected that our medical providers have to consider Paxlovid. It's not always compatible if the resident has certain decreased
Yeah.
lab tests,
Yeah.
then it's inappropriate to put them on a Paxlovid. You also can't crush it, so we've got a lot of residents that have to have their pills crushed. So in my experience, I'm seeing maybe 20 to 30% of the residents can actually get the Paxlovid.
Wow. All right, and in no longer, if people chose to get vaccinated, if they chose to, or their guardians chose to have the individual, is that a free thing anymore, or is that something we have to then pay for? Okay,
We have to pay for it.
Yes, although it's complicated, there is a reimbursement ability that we do work through with our finance department. So we pay up front and then we go through Part B billing.
okay,
And so off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you if there's a net positive or a net negative.
no,
Sure, we pay.
We can do it here.
We can.
We do
And-
bill a lot. We do bill for a lot, but because it combines with other type of vaccinations and whatnot, I can't specifically tell you how much is for the COVID, but the Part B billing is pretty robust.
and flu shot will be going out at some point this year.
We've already sent out the mass mailings to all the proxies.
Mhm.
And I personally wrote a letter because we had very little uptake this past spring, and I think that's contributed to this huge outbreak. So I personally wrote a letter to all the proxies as carefully as I could. I think what I find is when we lead the proxies by the hand and give them the documents to sign that we mailed out to them, and
Mhm,
then we follow up with many calls, many support
mhm.
discussions, and we have the medical director call them when there's still hesitancy. But my goal, I'd like to see our residents at 80 to 90% coming on this fall, and we'll do the big flu and COVID
Mhm.
in a combined effort. Let me just go backwards. We had a very poor uptake in COVID vaccine in the spring, but we really pushed for RSV. And if you recall, RSV was really hitting the community heavily, and that still has a pretty difficult outcome for our age residents. Whereas what we're seeing, knock on wood, that the COVID, it seems to be subsiding. We've actually had residents who've absolutely had no symptoms, and it's really difficult to convince somebody with very short-term memory issues. You're sick, you need to stay in your room, but I feel fine. Well, let me see the test. So we've been testing someone in particular several times to keep showing that you're sick. He's like, but I feel fine. So that's good. But it just goes back to, we didn't push for it this spring, we pushed for RSV. And so now we're pushing really heavily for COVID and flu vaccine this fall.
Yeah, okay.
Do you close the floor? Still?
We can't close, but we have to, use a lot of PPE, and when we've got residents that can't stay in a room, what we do is we then put all our staff in the fit test N95 with goggles. And then if you do go into the room with care, then you additionally have to don gowns and gloves. But if we can't keep that resident, because they don't understand, we put the plastic barrier up that maintenance made, and they realize that it's just on magnets. All they have to do is push it, then they can get out the door. So if we can't keep the residents in, that's what we have to do. And if you want to visit, you have to look like the Ebola garb.
Thank you.
So back to this, back that past 6 months, I went up to Concord to testify against SB 319. That would have caused counties to refrain from purchasing, promoting, or distributing certain vaccinations I know it was particularly against COVID, but it actually would have impacted us on several other fronts and would have put us in jeopardy with federal requirements. So.
Why was that bill presented? What was the motivation of the person introducing it?
I think it was political, I think there's vaccine concerns, and, you know, I understand we encourage as much as we can, but at the end of the day, we're not pouncing on anybody and jabbing them, but in this case, it would have put us at odds with federal regulations.
Bobby Kennedy wasn't involved, was he?
I don't think so,
Okay, sorry, sorry.
I don't know, I actually ignore that aspect of political, I have to run this place regardless of what people think about, a vaccine or not. Also, I was helping to work on a statewide initiative to introduce a bill, which actually did get supported, which allows assisted living staff that are not licensed to be able to be more involved in medication paths. It's not gonna involve us directly here with the style of management we have at our assisted living, but there are larger assisted livings that, because they also can't find enough nurses, if they can't have folks that are more like our M&As, but you can't do that in the assisted living, this essentially will allow a higher level of medication administration. I mean, just think about it this way, when you're at home, if you've got a loved one and you have to help them with their pills, you set their pills out and watch them take it. It's as simple as that, but of course, you know, the board of nursing and different
So
entities.
would that mean that it would rest on the individual, the RN that oversees that situation, would be on her license, and they would have training? Because this is no different, and this is already going on in the disability world. That's been going on for years and years and years. They get trained. It's a 16-hour course, 2 days, 8 hours. You take a test. If you pass it, you can. Then they go to the house, they do some testing there, and you're on, and I had one individual that had 17 different meds, 3 of them controlled, and you had to count the narcotics every time you gave them. And I mean, but that's for years and years, so that's, I don't know, except for the board of nursing, that can sometimes be a roadblock to things. I don't see why that couldn't work.
So we did get it passed.
Oh, good.
So that was pretty good. The other thing I've been working pretty heavily on it with, the Department of Health and Human Services is they're rewriting the nursing home rules. And one of the added elements that they put in there is, there's this thing called BEAS checks, Bureau of Elderly and Adult Services, which technically now has moved to Bureau of Adult and Aging Services, so BAS. Before you hire someone, you have to check that they're not on this registry. And if you get on the registry, it's because you've been deemed to have committed an act against an elder, which is abuse, neglect, misappropriation of resident property. And then you get on this list, although you've got various abilities to grieve it and avoid getting on the list. But once you get on the list, we in long-term care are not permitted to hire such an individual. So we have to do this thing called the BEAS check. It used to be pretty simple. You come in for hire, you would sign off on a document, we would fax it to the Bureau of Elderly and Adult Services. They would fax it back within the hour and we could proceed. It has now become a very complicated scenario where we have to alert the Bureau, who then sends an email to the prospective employee. It inevitably ends up in their junk email, or we still hire folks that don't have emails, smartphones. So it really puts a barrier and a block, and that's already in place. What this proposed 803 rewrite of the nursing home rules would have made us to do is on an annual basis, put every staff through this check again. The administrative burden is exponential. And so I've been fighting tooth and nail since I saw that in the rewrites as soon as January. And I continue to work. As a matter of fact, I've got Greg Martin on board. You might recall his name. He was a former county commissioner. So he's actually working at the state of New Hampshire in the adult protective services branch. So I've called him behind the scenes, but he's now part of this working group. And it's a very difficult scenario because, get this, the person who has been deemed to have had this issue, so they're on this list, they've done something against an elder, they have more rights than we do because we can't make that list be public. The only way we can check on the list is if we say, will you sign this so that we can check and see if you're on the list? So the individual who has done something wrong has all these rights. And when I pushed Greg to say, tell me what we need to do. Do we need to find a legislator to put forward legislation? And he said, you don't want to open this can of worms because it was so hard to even get this registry list going because of the individual rights that people were fighting for. And other states who have tried anything different, some of them have had their lists removed. So they don't even have an ability to say, we've got a set of individuals that don't work really well with the elderly, do not allow them to live in that environment.
So this list, the charges that are getting against these people, they're not actual crimes.
It's nothing that rises to the level of misdemeanors, and of course not felonies, and I already have to do checks on that. Before I hire anyone, we have to check and see if they have any misdemeanors or felonies.
Because if they were that, then they wouldn't really have a right.
It would be easier.
Yeah.
This is, I can't even think of an example, because maybe the founded abuse. So if I were frustrated with a resident and I swatted at them, I mean, that's physical abuse.
Child abuse.
I just don't know what the difference is between a founded result such as that and why it doesn't become a misdemeanor. So maybe that was a bad example. Perhaps if I used verbal language that was derogatory and it was confirmed that I did that and it impacted the resident, like I was purposely trying to. So a founding that would not rise to the level of misdemeanor, but that puts you on that list so that I shouldn't hire them. I have to get that person's permission to check the list. So here's what's at issue. Once we hire someone, it could be that the next day they end up on the list. And what's so frustrating is the Bureau, they know this. And they apparently have seen it happen where they've had to send the results back to say there's no finding. But then within a certain amount of time, a finding does occur. And apparently the Bureau has no ability to say to the facility, you just hired someone that's on this list. So our response is, okay, so you have us do it annually? Annually is not gonna fix it. If they came on the list within days of me hiring them, I'm gonna have them working for me for a year before you tell me that they shouldn't be working for me. Don't put in a regulation. That's not actually gonna fix the problem. Anyway, I'm a little passionate about that one because it's quite an administrative burden. So we're working really hard to avert that, but yet still trying to find a way to make sure that those that we hire and that retain are safe to work in this environment. Let's see, those 803s, continue to meet with the federal delegation about the minimum staffing rules. There still is legislation pending in the state of Texas against the minimum staffing rule. We're not going to hear anything before January. So we're gonna have to keep going through the budget process, assuming that the minimum staffing is gonna be in place.
But there are lawsuits challenging it.
There are, yeah. During the 6 months, Cheshire EMS permanently moved down to the ground floor in that space, the office space beside the garage, and we have up to 2 ambulances down here at all times. In that 6 months, we held.
Are they staffing here at all times?
Not necessarily. That's a question for Chad. I think when he's got some challenges, they might not be physically present.
That would be true. I mean, if we have to pull an ambulance out of here because of calls, you know, throughout the county, well, whether it's Westmoreland or whether it's some other town, then yeah, that may, they're not here.
We had 1 LNA class during this reporting period and graduated 5 new LNAs.
Good.
Concerns this past 6 months are passenger elevator is not working. We'll maybe wait for Aaron's report to go into that for a little more detail. I continue to be the governor's appointee to the Opioid Abatement Commission, and I meet monthly in Concord on that. Carol, do we have a report?
Already sent in.
Okay.
She already sent it in last week.
Okay, thanks. I haven't received it from the committee yet, and it feels like we're the last ones to report, so I just want to make sure it's coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I originally sent it to the commissioner and she responded back saying that it needed to go to somebody else. That was the first time I had
Yeah.
another name. And she responded back just this week saying, thank you, I'll make sure to get it to the committee.
Okay, I think it's Jennifer Gallagher.
No, it's McDonald. Christy McDonald, isn't it?
But yeah,
Okay. Oh, it's Jennifer Gallagher that sends it to us, that's why I'm thinking that. Also working through the New Hampshire Healthcare Association, we've been meeting a lot with the Medicaid director because of the ongoing issues with Medicaid pending. And a proposed solution, that we haven't addressed with the counties yet is just a notion of trying to find a pressure release valve. There are facilities that, Cheryl, I know we feel like we're in a difficult spot, but I know of a facility that's got 100 beds and they've got 30 residents that are Medicaid pending. And the last total that I understood that they were owed from Medicaid was about $800,000. So they're just really struggling with, they're slow paying all their vendors. They're at risk of not paying their staff. I don't know if you noticed in the news, but even Langdon Place of Keene, and I think 8 total Genesis facilities just got sold to another entity, a new one I've never heard of. 603 caregiving, 603, there's 603 in the title. So there's a lot of problems out there. When Genesis keeps having to shed more and more of its facilities and these little operators are having 30 people Medicaid pending, we're past, it being a challenge. It's actually.
Is this a time, I know this is gonna sound wrong, but when with a lot of changes means a lot of uncertainty, maybe even some changes in their retirement plans within the corporation, maybe their pay, whatever it may be. Is this a time where we should be really advertising to, because there are some good quality people working in these places that are, and I'll tell you, from what I understand, their level of coverage compared to, or residents to nursing or residents to LNA are completely different than what we have. So I'm
We
just,
do have a lot out there on Facebook, if you've noticed already.
yeah,
Kim has worked with the Keene Sentinel and they're advertising through our Maplewood Facebook page.
yeah, I saw that. I had to change one thing, the picture.
Well, the issue of pending Medicaid is not new, and the state has never had the resources necessary to timely do it. This is at least a 20-year-old problem. And Cheryl probably remembers the days when we used to withhold passing on our Medicaid match dollars to them to kind of force a showdown. Because because we pay the bills, but they don't process the applications and so forth. And of course, their position was always that it's illegal for us to not pass on the Medicaid dollars to them. And my counter to them was, well, it's illegal. It violates federal law for you to take this long to process Medicaid applications. And it does. I don't actually remember the federal regulation that requires they do it within a certain number of days.
yeah, 45 days, but, but
Go ahead.
no, you keep going.
No, but the question is, it's the same old that the state, forces you into doing all sorts of things, and then it carries no obligations on its own to actually do their job. So, it still comes back that what's the remedy if they're violating federal regulation that requires that Medicaid applications get processed and determined in 45 days? What's the remedy? Because it seems to me that the Healthcare Association, using membership dollars, could file a federal action seeking enforcement. Now, as we know, it never works to sue the state because they can just ignore it, like they have school funding and all those lawsuits and everything else. But, between the regulatory burden and the cash flow, it almost seems like they're trying to put nursing homes out of business because they're doing a good job of it. I mean, they're breaking the back of every facility. And so I don't know what the answer is, but I think it would be it's a good political year to try to draw attention to it. And I think the Healthcare Association would be properly situated to do that, because it doesn't just affect us, it affects everybody, and it affects every single person that, you know, might need nursing home care. It's,
Well, Jack, you're in luck. I am the vice chair of the New Hampshire Healthcare Association's board right now, so we're in good shape. We've hired Charles Powell. We're meeting with the state almost monthly now. And I'm sure that they can see, reading between the lines, that with Charles at the helm, we have been threatening a lawsuit against the DHHS, but we're never gonna get a good outcome if it's always about threats. So Charles has a really nice approach. He's basically just put forth some proposals, and I'm reluctant to give too much detail because we really need the lobbyists to talk with the Association of Counties. I don't want to prematurely put forth the solution that we've been proposing. I know behind the scenes, Cheryl and I have looked at it, and Cheryl, do you want to speak to the potential solution in terms of if you think it's supportable and any concerns from the association without really divulging what it is before we get our lobbyists to talk?
Then I'm not sure really what to say.
I know.
I mean, essentially, I mean, we're probably not in that bad of a shape. I mean, our outstanding Medicaid is about 161,000, and that may be ones that are not necessarily just Medicaid pending. Sometimes there's ones that have tripped up. So but there's others that are in much dire straits. I mean, I think I can kind of say that one of the solutions that the state's coming or thinking about is to be able to start advancing nursing home their money, but the potential is that you would have to pay it back if they find out that the something happened that caused the resident to not be eligible for Medicaid. And also, it sounds like you'd probably have to pay them back anyway, because they'd have to front the money from the general fund and then they'd pay you again. So it would be this back and forth that could be a huge risk for the state. The problem that's happening right now, where they're staying within their federal guidelines, is they are processing the applications within 45 days, or they're looking at the paperwork within 45 days. But what's happening is that when they look at the paperwork, then they find out that there's still more information needed. So every time they touch the paperwork and then they push it back into the court of the resident and the resident family to say, okay, this is all well and good, but we still need X, Y, and Z, they have another 45 days to deal with it. And that's the trap that we're getting into with a handful of our residents, that the families are feeling like they've provided everything. And at times they are, but that's a whole nother broken part of the system. But it then becomes a surprise to us when maybe 4 months later, 5 months later, we find out not everything is good. Because once they start finally diving in to everything, they're realizing, you know, we had a situation where all of a sudden we thought everything was great, and then we find out that there was a trust that was in both the name of the resident and the child that put the person over resources, and we've been waiting months and months and months. So when the trust was finally or stocks were finally sold, it wasn't enough money to pay the back balance. And so this is the trap we're getting into, that they are so far behind in reviewing these cases that you're just basically risking not knowing what they're going to uncover. If there's going to be what we call a good start date, meaning to coincide with the day that we needed Medicaid to start paying. So that's how they're getting around it, is they're starting their 45 days over every single time they review the paperwork. And if they find there's more, then they've got 45 more days to review the new paperwork that's coming in the door.
So Jack, the other thing is that there's work groups that have been formed, and actually our Linda Donnelly is on one of the work groups. One of the issues identified is that language that we must use because of federal regulations are very complicated and very legalese. So one of the groups that Linda is on is trying to look at the notifications to make it so that it's more clear. And Linda's great because she's actually seen it firsthand, working with the families, how confusing that is. And then there's two other work groups. So I think with Charles Powell taking the lead on this, knowing that there's always the risk that we're actually gonna litigate against the state is working very favorably with us. I do hope that when it gets presented to the counties, that we look at the big picture of it and see that we can't afford to lose any homes. It's just gonna put pressure on all of us, and we can't even take in the residents if there was a facility closure, because we still can't staff it. So we just need to be really mindful that, this is a really, really, really big problem. The unwinding that happened at the end of last year was part of it. DHHS admits that they knew they were putting us last. They were putting folks in the community first because they're a little more at risk. They look at the residents here saying they're not at risk, they're in a safe place. We'll just stop paying the facilities, but they have to provide care. So they put us in an awkward position. The other thing that we know happened was, and you might appreciate this, Jack, from the finance, the state and local finance committee, is that with what was put in the budget for Medicaid, we weren't using all the bed days. And because we all have Medicaid pending, we lost sight of the fact that our Medicaid pendings were growing and growing and growing because of the unwinding. So what happened was we decided, oh, well, we can get a little bit more for our daily rate because there's all this money left. Well, what happened was then two things. We actually used all the money. So even if the state could more quickly go through the Medicaid pendings, the money was now gone out of the account, not the general fund, but whatever the state account. And
$459.
what's that, Cheryl?
Was it like a 459 account or something? I don't know. But it doesn't
Whatever
matter.
the account is, like, because usually at the end of each 6 months, we would get some of that money back to us. And this year there was actually nothing. So we thought we could, the second point was, when we went to the legislature and asked for was it a 5% increase in Medicaid rates? Well, that got eaten up because the money was gone, so they couldn't give us more money out of the rates because it was already gone. So the legislature thinks that they gave us more rates, and it didn't actually happen. Anyway, it's long and complicated, but we keep working with them. And soon enough, we'll bring it to the counties to see if we can get momentum on our suggested correction. And the state knows, DHHS knows that they can't keep doing this. They have issues with staffing, just like we do. Although apparently they had a 10% increase in pay rate recently, because I had an interesting visit from somebody from DHHS yesterday for our Medicaid. What was that called, Cheryl? Revalidation.
Yep.
Yeah. So they came out, this fellow came out to do a bit of an audit, and I was asking him about how are they doing with staffing. He says, oh, actually, we're really starting to do well at the state. We're getting more and more people. We had a 10% increase in what our pay is. So we're not finding as many open positions. Anyhow, so Medicaid is hiring more folks, and they are trying to get at this quicker, but there's a lot of competing interests, a lot of competing factors as to why the Medicaid pendings are a problem. So we'll keep working on it, and I'll let Jim Boulay talk to Jim Monahan and then present it, I'm sure, to the county administrators.
Well, I'm glad you'll be able to fix it.
Oh boy. During the past 6 months, I've met with the Keene State College and the River Valley Nursing entities, because we've been hosting their students, and we're trying to find ways to not just host the students for LPN and RN, but actually to bring them on board, trying to find new opportunities. So those meetings have been happening. And then the last two things, I put the pharmacy contract out to bid. So pretty soon I'll be bringing to you a proposal to see if we stay with Omnicare, or I expect I'm gonna get 4 total proposals. And, the bids are due for me this Friday, and then I'll bring it to you all in the next month with a recommendation. And then the very last thing is, about a year ago now, you gave me the ability to get therapy support without putting it out to bid, because we were in a bit of a pickle and we really needed support right then, right there. So we did that 1-year contract with HPH. And I have gone ahead and terminated the contract. I've let them know with the appropriate time frame that thank you for the 1 year, and they did what they did. They've supported Katie, and we're ready to go on our own, and Katie she's functioning very well. We do need therapists, but they weren't able to provide that many therapists anyways. So I did go ahead and sunset that HPH contract, but I do appreciate the support you gave me last year to put it in place. Bit of an emergency when I brought it to your attention, and it worked well for us. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, I'm gonna move on to master agenda item number 1199, Maplewood Facility City Annual Report. Aaron Newman's here, acting to receive information report on the last 6 months of operations at the facilities at Maplewood. Aaron.
Well, thank you. So I'm gonna start with some project updates, and I do have to apologize, since this was written, we have a few details have changed, so I'm just gonna give you that. It'll deviate from my report just a little bit. So I'm gonna start with the generator. And early on, we began working to add load, actually really the entire building onto the generators. Right now, we're about 32%. Life safety circuits, so anyway, so we're working with, Steve Warren, an engineer, and, the electrical contractor who did the work initially, in the electrical room during the renovation and construction process.
And we have the capacity on the generator.
We do, certainly do. Yes, they are, enormous generators, and it will handle the building. So, anyway, our first meeting, it was a very positive, meeting. Our electrical contractor really thought that, with our budget, that they would be able to meet our expectations by adding, the entire building onto the generator. A couple months went by, and actually last week we met again with Steve Horton and the electrical contractor, and his proposal came back much higher than anticipated, beyond our budget. So we talked it over for about a half an hour and came up with a possible alternate solution to the problem that we have. Originally, the plan that he had, entailed a lot of excavation, the transformer, repiping, and so on and so forth. He thinks that he might be able to get a new cabinet for the switchgear. It would eliminate any excavation that we need to do outside, and he would be able to then transfer the entire load onto the gym. I haven't seen pricing yet for that. It is, I'm hoping to see it within the next few weeks. If he is still high, then Steve Horton has some other possible solutions that we can start exploring.
So help me understand what the problem is that we're trying to fix. Because it means it's a brand new building, and
It's a brand new building.
My recollection is the emergency generator services the things we're required to service.
Exactly.
And so we don't, I mean, how many outages do we have for such a duration, and how much money are we talking about to now in this brand new building suddenly electrify all of it? And
yeah, so
Sorry, let me interject, Jack. I don't know if you remember, but the original plan, right from the get-go, was to put 100% of the building on generator.
Yeah, that was my question. How come it wasn't done?
We
when the
had to
building was-
carve some things out with COVID, with financial challenges when our budget started to get too lean. One of the things we ended up having to carve out was to completely get everything onto the generator. So we've got two things going on, Jack. One, we're not quite at 30%, which means we need to do special and additional tests because we don't meet the minimum requirements. But the second thing is, there's a ton of things that aren't electrified, which really, it creates quite the problem. And the intent was that they all be electrified. So we did have that additional monies that was,
About $80,000?
yeah, so we have the money all set, and initially Ham said he could do it. He's just wavering on it. We've got some different options, but this was always supposed to be the original plan with the building, so I just wanted to get that back in front of you, Jack, just because
And,
that's an old story, and I think we've forgotten about it.
and the only other thing I would add to it is that I think we went with Hamlet because they did the work in the building.
And they were familiar with.
Right, but we
Yeah.
just had some really good success in putting the new generator in down at the Keene campus. And I think the people that did the electrical work, he really liked working there with that relationship. So I think what he's thinking is either Ham's gonna make this work within where we need to be, or he's gonna look to see if somebody else can do that work.
That's exactly it.
Okay,
That's exactly it.
So
So,
what's the amount and how much was the variance?
so the proposal that we had was $415,000 to add, the rest of the circuits onto the generator. So, we are, right
And how
around.
much- And how much money did we have allocated that they said was initially adequate?
About 130. Now, and again, too, I mean, like I said, so when we had our first meeting, we really, Ham really thought that he was gonna be able to come in where we needed him to be. And when he went back to do the math and plan it all out, that's when we saw some pretty significant price increases. So, to Chris's point, we do have other options that we will explore. We're just giving Hamlin Electric a little bit more time, sharpen the pencil, see if they can come up with another solution to the problem, and really lower the cost for the project.
Okay,
The generator for
Sure.
a second. If I recall correctly, it's a wood-fired generator.
No, it is not. It is a diesel fired generator. We have two. One generator will handle the entire building. The other generator is backup in case the first generator failed to start. You're talking about the heater. Yeah, so we have a biomass chip boiler here that provides heat for the building.
Okay. So is that a wet chip or a dry
It's
chip?
a dry chip.
Okay. Was that a good decision? Because 6 or 7 years ago, I recall a great deal of discussion by the former commissioner, in fact, about whether it should be wet or dry.
That's right.
we didn't go with the green.
And, right, so, and actually I had a conversation with Bruce about this, when we had our 1 week overlap. And he said that green chips require, there's a lot more maintenance involved. Yes, they are a little bit cheaper, but it creates other issues on the back end. So efficiency, yeah, so by using the dry chip, it's easier for us.
And it is dry chip.
Yes. Mhm. It's dried actually in Keene at Furman. I took a tour of the facility, 2 months ago. So they invited me down to check out their facility, show me how things work, and it was a great event.
So you're satisfied?
I am,
Can I ask a question?
sure,
Is this the one, Catherine and Aaron, that we have rolled over funds of about
Yes.
$7,000 left?
for the generator,
Yeah,
I thought that there was a capital,
It's.
No.
I have it written down at my desk. I can certainly just verify the numbers.
do
I-
we?
I
Okay.
thought that there was, actually, I think we had a conversation that, part of it was, I think. Let me think about it, I think there was like 80,000 coming from. a different account, and then there was also an allocation, I think between the two, we got to.
130.
130.
Oh, wait, yeah. 79.
And that was, we had that conversation, I don't know, maybe 3.5 months ago, maybe 4 months.
What's that?
He said that you had a conversation with him about 3 months ago, 4 months ago.
Yeah, so I am noticing there's two items. So there's the rolled over 77,662 back from 2022. And then we allocated 42,337.92 from the FF&E, Catherine. And those two combined numbers are 120,000. So, but I was only looking at the 77. I forgot the 42. So.
What did he explain that would involved to make the price jumps so high from what, 130 to 450? And it's more than.
Believe me, I was completely surprised when I saw the proposal.
It's a whole new generator.
It was incredibly expensive. Now, that having been said, I mean, wire size the conductors, they're much larger. It's not like something you would see residentially. It's 3-phase power. There was a significant amount of site work that they were going to do, a lot of excavation, repiping, refeeding, and then, you know.
So the original design on the building was changed when we dropped that money from the budget? Because all of that should have been,
well, so
the conduit and all of that should have been there.
right, so the conduit is there, for whatever reason, the conduit to add the entire building wasn't there. So really what Hamlet was going to do was, he was going to, you know, dig up the conduit that comes from the transformer, and he was going to tie into that, feed that into the, automatic transfer switch. From there, he would have another conduit. He would have to redo the conduit coming inside that goes to the main breaker. Rework the circuit, the circuits in there. And at the end of it, after he tallied everything up, you know, that's when we came to it. Now, that having been said, we did come up with a possible another solution. I had asked him if he could reach out to GE, they're the ones who manufacture the switch gears, and see if there was something that we could do to alter the bus side. The buses where all the conductors come in, and then that's when he came up with, well, if we add another section, we won't have to do any excavation outside, and we would be able to you know, transfer the load. And that would bring substantial savings to the project. Again, I don't know if Ham's gonna be able to deliver on that. And that's why we started talking about other possibilities.
An RFP.
Yeah, so I think originally we were gonna stay with Ham because Ham had done all the work.
If
in the electrical.
it's contractually, if it's in the house and he's already done the work, then we usually, it's sort of like what we're doing with Griffin upstairs. They did all the work at the courthouse. We're doing the 2 rooms that we're adding on and we're adding to their contract. With this situation, yeah,
Being that they've lived so much.
yeah.
It's not really a continuation.
Yeah, you know, Steve was shocked when he saw the proposal, and he and I had a conversation going into the meeting. And that's when he had indicated that he does have other, and he actually was talking about the company that he
Yeah.
used at 12th Street, and that he was very impressed with that. Well, that having been said, I mean, we're giving him one more try. And then of course, you know, we'll sit down here, once we put together a solid plan, for this tire.
And you know what's interesting to me, and I never think about this stuff, but a lot of time world events can affect our costs. And one of the biggest makers of the switches and stuff like that, Ukraine. And transformers, Ukraine. And so that's driven the cost up on some levels too, because those manufactured plants have been hit. or they don't have the workforce because they're fighting, whatever it may be, so that means the pricing is going up and it's harder to find them and all that jazz, so sometimes you don't think about those things until they hit home, but that has come into play a few times now with us, and I know with some of the switches when we were doing it, that was one of the issues too.
And as far as power reliability here, I can say, I've been here a short time, but I think we've seen 3 or 4 power outages. Not long, maybe an hour, but we've had those, I personally see it. So it just really depends on the weather. If we had an issue where power was down for days, the 30% that what we're currently powering, I mean, we don't have bathroom lights, lighting is sporadic. Catherine and I were talking about just not having, we would have residents here, let's just say it was a week, and they don't have the ability, to watch TV. I mean, we take it for granted, we might not think it's a big deal, but when you're in a room, there's, that's your.
Well, it's moving the whole administrative wing someplace so that they can, have the ability to do work too.
So what's in?
Am I wrong?
Well, administration is on the generator.
Is it now?
It is on
Social
the generator.
services.
Oh, social
there's
service,
large
okay.
Segments that need to move because.
So what's in the capital budget that's not encumbered?
No, this is all encumbered, he's just reporting on, we haven't yet been able to finalize the generator project, it's in another.
We're not there yet, but we'll report out once we do.
Absolutely. I'll just jump right into the ALF renovation. So again, we met with Griffin Construction late last week. We met with Steve Morton as well. Originally, ALF was going to run in tandem with the Red Barn project that's happening down at the end of the road. So we don't have a scope of work developed at this point. We know what we're looking to do, and the meeting that we had last week really was about creating that scope. So what's going to happen next week is Griffin Construction is coming up. They're going to take a look at one of the empty apartment that we have, and he is going to do a price list, and with all the things that we want.
And the empty apartment is which building?
Assisted living, which is.
Okay, sure.
Good. So from there, originally the scope of work for this one was ceiling tiles, we're gonna paint, we're gonna do new flooring, new cabinetry, and new apartments. Okay.
In all the.
So what Griffin's gonna do is he's gonna put together some costs. And we already have the flooring, we know what we're gonna use for flooring, we already know what we're gonna use for ceiling tile, it's gonna be similar to, it's gonna be the same as what we use for theirs. But what he's actually gonna do is, put cost of paper, and then we're gonna sit down a week or two later and go through the budget. Originally, like I said, it was gonna run in tandem with the Red Barn, and the Red Barn is gonna start mid-September. So they're gonna do their renovation of that building down there in mid-September. And Steve thought that by doing these 2 projects in tandem, there'd be some sort of cost savings. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. We need to finish it all in the scope of work, which I'm hoping to have done very soon. So really our time frame now is the beginning of January. That we hope to move the residents onto the 3rd floor. We can get in there, we can redo the flooring, the cabinetry, painting. And then on a side note, what we've decided to do was add an additional lighting circuit in the living room part of the apartment, right? So right now they have, the light that they have comes from O&M, so we are gonna put in a couple of hot lights with a switch. So, I think that's gonna be, hugely beneficial for the residents. So that's actually, that's the materials are in, and our electrician, he's starting that project now. We should have that completed by.
And again, that was RFP. And we only had one submission, and that was Griffin.
Yes, it was.
Then for the Red Barn project, that work can be done in the winter time?
The Red Barn project, well, that's gonna start in September. And what we need to do is we need to get down there, we need to move our things out of there. I spoke with Griffin, they're gonna help with, a portion of that. Actually, while I have you here, I do have a quick question. We were actually, Catherine and I were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Chris.
No, it's,
Yeah.
no, it's just that there is items in there that really we don't have any use for, that have been stored in there from different projects, not just the remodeling of this, but we're wondering if there is opportunity to put it out on the road for free instead of just throwing it in the dumpster, allowing people to take it. Would you be comfortable with that? It's not items that, I mean, it's just mix and match type items of things. It's siding,
Leftover
tiles and things like that. So we're just saying if people would want to take it, then
Absolutely.
I mean, I just want to make sure people are comfortable. It's not,
It's items from the jail that used to be, down at the bottom of the road. There's chicken wire, there's fencing, there's all snow fencing that we no longer use. There's rolls of underlayment, that, was purchased for this project, but was never used. But most of what Maplewood has will be taken out, and we're gonna put that into the 6-bay garage. We're not, there's a lot of value there. This is really more of things that have accumulated over the decades. There's old windows in there, that'll never be used, but if somebody's building a camp, I mean, they'd be perfect for that. And what it does is it really reduces the cost of, throwing trash away, right? I mean,
getting a 30-yard dumpster and throwing everything in the dumpster.
Yeah, and then that was one of the questions that Griffin had posed. If you're able to, put some of this stuff out on the road, it's gonna go, everything goes, and it's gonna bring down the cost of the Red Barn, in particular, so. And it's recycling, right?
Sure, right, but it also helps people who are on a very fixed budget, who are trying to do whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah,
It's good
exactly.
PR.
And it's not like the
No
bunch stuff.
mattresses or couches.
Well,
No, none of that, none of that.
no, and the other thing is we will not, there are machinery that's in there that's from the barn area. That stuff all stays. That's historical. We want to keep it there. We want to, over time, do a little history so people can read up on it when they come in. And, it's because it's not just a meeting place, it's also part of our history. And if you remember, the outside of the shell is our focus. And then we're also gonna we received monies so that we can put solar on there. There'll be a bathroom that's put in there. I mean, I was I missed you, I guess, but I went up to the celebration at the gardens last week. And, talking to the people up there about, this opportunity, they were ecstatic about it. And there were so many people up there that utilized.
Wasn't it?
It was a really good show.
Yeah, it was. And so they're ecstatic about it because they're actually saying in the past, when they had this event to celebrate the gardens, if it's raining, they've gone to the hall. This next year they can just go right in there and it's right on site. So it's really, I think, a good thing.
Are there any blueprints or plans that we can actually see to get a sense of what it's gonna look like?
Yeah.
So, Steve Horton referred to it as a design build, okay? Now, really, they're focusing on windows. I don't think, and I don't have a lot of details with regards.
We can have Steve come though.
Well, I think we have an obligation to get a sense of what it is we're doing. I mean,
Yeah, and Steve talked about it, but it's really it's the outside shell. So first and foremost, there's rot going on with some of the parts of the building.
I don't need to know now, but I think just for the record, we ought to be able to show something. I mean.
Yeah, I'll talk to Steve. He's away right now. I think he's back around the 19th or there.
Just around that.
Yeah, around that date. So maybe a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to him.
I mean, it just is a little fuzzy from what are we gonna get and what are we gonna use it for and what is it gonna look like? I mean, we don't really know any of that, really.
Yeah, I mean, I can share with you and I can send it out. I have Griffin's proposal of what they're going to do. But yeah, we'll have Steve come in and really outline it with Curtis.
So anyway, so moving on, so, HVAC PMs, for all of our rooftop units, we've completed that this summer. We had some tree limbs, actually, they were, Rob had noticed them, they were up against, the water treatment plant on the roof. And also they had grown, through the power lines heading to wastewater. We had those removed. It ended up being a little bit more complicated. We had to bring in the power company. Originally, we had started with Wilcox, and once they got going with it, they realized that we needed to bring in Eversource. So they came in, they did a great job, and we will keep an eye on that to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Did they charge you for it?
I haven't seen a bill yet for it from Eversource. So, but Wilcox, there was a bill for that. From that. The SPCC plan, it's spill prevention, control and countermeasures. So we have to do this every 5 years. We had Aries Engineering out here. We did receive multiple quotes for this particular report that they need to generate for us. This report will be once they generate it, will be submitted with DES. It is a state requirement. And basically what they're looking at is they're looking at our ASDs, they're looking at what kind of risks and how we mitigate the risk of oil entering the environment is something that you know, every company has to do if they have above ground storage tanks. So we do have 3 above ground storage tanks. We have each cat generator has a 3,000 gallon tank. It is dual containment. It is a fantastic system. We have leak control, leak monitoring and alarms, and we have circuitry for filling, so that we don't have overflows. Anyway, so Aries came in, they looked at, you know, all of our storm drains, where the runoff goes, and they're gonna create a report. They had some small recommendations. Basically, what we need to do is add some spill response, kits, you know, speed, dry, oil absorbing pads, things of that nature. But for the most part, we're in great shape. So they looked at the 2 tanks, for the generators. We also have the fire pump that was an 80 gallon tank, that's dual containment. It's a really nice system that we have. And then we also looked at the elevators because they have hydraulic oil. So as far as the 3 elevators that are internal to the building, we don't have anything to worry about there. However, we do have 1 elevator with the door that it's with an exterior door right over here. So like I said, there's no concern. This is a formality. We should see that report in the next couple of weeks. Okay. WinPack is, it's the software that drives access control here. So what it does is it integrates all of the hardware, right? Your badge readers, your door strikes. It creates a computer interface. And when I first started, we were having some issues utilizing certain portions of the software, right? And specifically what we were having issues with were the actual badges. We weren't able to issue new badges. We weren't able to deactivate badges. And we brought in our vendor 3 times, and we looked at everything, trying to understand what was going on. Ultimately, the solution to that was an upgrade to the software. So we upgraded the software, and like every other company, they're going like Microsoft, where now all of a sudden there's a licensing fee that you have to do every year. So we not only got an upgraded, upgraded the software that drives the system. The one thing I just want to just mention is, we never had an issue where the building wasn't secure. It was just issuing badges and deactivating badges. So from a security standpoint, the building was secure. So anyways, we successfully upgraded the software there. And it has been running flawlessly since. And we get to look forward to other fee So, but, smoke dampers, so this is done every few years. And we completed, all smoke dampers in the ductworks, this summer. It was quite an undertaking that the electrician had to do. We had to basically put in switches, I didn't say that Mike had to put in switches that overrided the smoke dampers. And what they do is they're tied into the fire alarm system. So if there's a smoke detector in the duct that picks up, that senses smoke, these dampers close. And the state requires us to test that. The way that really Bruce and Mike came up with was by putting this inline switch, so we would be able to mimic an event where that smoke damper would close. So a lot of work went into that. They finished that up. Mike finished that up, and yeah, so they did a great job there. As we go to water treatment and water treatment, so for Q1 and Q2, so in Q1, we produced, Rob produced 551,000 gallons of water. In Q2, it was 442,000 gallons of water. The well produced 483,000 gallons in Q1 and 376,000 gallons in Q2. Finished water, now this is finished water that is taken from the river, processed, cleaned, and then sent into the distribution system. So in Q1, Rob produced 492,000 usable gallons of water, and in Q2, 390,000 gallons. Now the well water doesn't make it down to the water treatment plant. The water treatment plant really specifically is just for surface water that we're taking out of the connected river. Okay, and then discharge water that we discharged, through wastewater. There was 700,000 gallons in Q1, and then in Q2 we discharged 695,000 gallons. After the treatment process, it was discharged to the river. As we move forward, so for the budget, we are in great shape. What I did was I pulled out 3 areas that we have spent more up until this point. So the one that I want to point out is so for auto repair, the bus needed significant work. Okay, so we had $6,500 budgeted for repairs. This is for all of the company vehicles we have on site. This also includes the zero-turn lawnmowers, the side-by-side. For the bus repairs, there was about $5,000. That wasn't all of the work that we needed to do. So there will be another $1,500 or so next year of repairs that we have to do. Okay, so that's the reason the bus is really the reason why we're at negative 16.33%. And
What's the chassis look like on that?
I haven't actually physically looked at it yet. But I can definitely do that. It's an old bus.
And before we start throwing more money into it, we're gonna look at it.
Yes, and the
POT with their bus. I'll write it out.
right, yep. And then with building repairs, the reason why we're at 38% is because when we did the software upgrade, that money, it was unexpected. It's the best way that I can say it. And that money came out. If we hadn't spent the money on the software upgrade for WinPack, we would have been right at 50%. Okay, those were the only 2 lines in our budget that we were under at. Aside from that, we're in good shape with our budget. Everything is looking good. So the big one, the elevator. So we've had a significant issue with the elevator. There's no getting around that. You know, and, we have spent, Stanley Elevator has spent a considerable amount of time, trying to, you know, diagnosing what the issue was. And originally, to give you just a quick overview, so, early in May, we started having a shudder. It was an oscillation. And it got to a point where I took it out of service. Brought in Stanley Elevator, they made some adjustments, put the elevator back in service. A couple days later, we're having the same issue. And over the service calls, it's important to understand that we've had 200 hours of labor from Stanley working on this problem. This is gonna be elevator, it's 1392, it's a passenger elevator right next to the service elevator. Okay. So during the first go around with the elevator, it got to a point where we just had, Stanley had to pull the piston out of the cylinder. So it's a hydraulic elevator, and what you have is a hydraulic cylinder that's 60 feet long. And there's a shaft that was drilled into the ground. This thing is recessed into the ground. And then you have the piston, which is attached to the car, that's driven by hydraulic fluid, hydraulic pressure that sends the elevator up or down. So what Stanley did was they came in, they pulled the piston, they found some broken guide wheels on the bottom of that piston. They thought that was the issue. They put it all back together. We still had the oscillation between 3 and 4. And I spoke to them in depth about it, and they came back 2 other days and spent entire days trying to solve that oscillation. And what they had said to me was, well, we're at a point where we've replaced everything that we can. Okay, the only way to know whether or not, you know, they had indicated that possibly that the cylinder had shifted. Subgrade below ground. So anyway, they put it back in the service. They thought that it was fine, it was gonna be fine. And about a week later, they deemed it safe. A week later, we had another issue, and at that point, took it back out of service, called Stanley Elevator, and they came, and what it was the seal, the hydraulic seal had failed. So we brought in, and this is important, we brought in representatives from Stanley. It was the New Hampshire account manager and then the maintenance manager at this point. And they came in, we sat down, we had a meeting with them, and they said to move forward, what they need to do is pull the piston. And then they need to send down a spider. It's a way to measure to see if that cylinder is plumb. Okay. And we agreed to it, and they came in, they pulled the piston. And let me explain the spider. The spider is this round device, it's attached to a cable. That's suspended and it has a crank on it. And it's just like a plumb bob, but it has these fingers that come out. And what they do is they set that at a distance to measure the cylinder. And then what they do is they put this tape measure, a ruler, and then they measure to see, as they're dropping this plumb bob, to see if it's moving back and forth. Okay. And it did, it moved about 7/16 inch. Now they were estimating it to be like around 30 feet. Okay. And you know, it would, you know, the plumb bob would move out, you know, 7/16 inch, and by the time it got down, you know, after another 20 feet, it came back right to 0. And
Sort of in the middle.
it is. So something had shifted, which is creating that bump, which is creating the problem, the vibration that we have between 3 and 4. It created the issue for the wheels that had broken. Okay, the guide wheels are on the bottom of the piston. And as that piston is going up that cylinder, it's just like something on a tractor, just a lot bigger and a lot, bigger in diameter and a lot longer. Those guide rails kind of keep that piston from making contact with the cylinder wall, right? Because, as a hydraulic cylinder, I'm sure you guys know, they're chrome plated and, so anyways, so at this point, Stanley Elevator is saying that, we need to pull the jack assembly. Okay. I did some digging, and actually, so, I just received the proposal, on Monday. Okay, and they came in at $98,000. I asked them, they're coming in on Friday, this Friday at 10 a.m. They confirmed this morning. And we're gonna sit down because we have some questions with regards to their proposal. So, and really, so because the cylinder is below grade, it's really hard to determine damage. Okay, if we don't know, so when they, let me back up. So when they install the jack assembly, and the jack assembly is the assembly you see if we were to open up the elevator door, it's what sits on the concrete slab, but it also contains the cylinder that travels about 60 feet down below grade. And what they do is before they install that jack assembly, they install this PVC casing. Okay, and this PVC casing is required by code, and what it does is, if you ever were to have a leak, hydraulic leak, an oil leak, right? It contains it from, saturating the soil, groundwater, things of that nature. What we don't know is whether or not that PVC casing is intact. We don't know if it's broken. And this is where we're, it's hard to understand what created a shift, okay, in that cylinder to create that 7/16 of a bow that's bringing issues there. So they're coming in on Friday. I have a whole slew of questions, and one of them is a warranty question. Okay, so, the new cylinder, that they're proposing that they install, would come with a 1-year warranty. Okay, now, there is the, possibility of, extending that warranty up to 20 years. I had asked the other day what the cost was to that. She wasn't sure, but she was gonna get back to me on Friday when we sit down and meet and talk about this. We will, have answers to all of those questions. Some of the questions I have is if the PVC is intact, first of all, are you gonna measure it to see if the PVC is bowed? If it's intact, is it something we can use? Another question that I have that we're gonna ask is it possible to, if there's specific damage, the cylinder, let me back up, the cylinder, because it's so long, comes in sections. The same with the piston itself, okay? It's so long, you wouldn't be able to get it in place. So the cylinder actually screws together, okay, in 3 sections. So they'll bring the section, we'll drop it down into the shaft. They bring in the second section, they screw that together, drop down the 2 sections, then they bring in the third. And then, they set it into place. And the same with the piston, the process for the piston is the exact same. Again, the only way you'd be able to bring that in is with an enormous crane. You'd have to put in a hole in the roof, the whole 9 yards. So that's the reason why it comes in sections. So one of my questions is, is if you do see damage in one of the sections, is it possible just to replace that section? I have a lot of other questions that we're gonna ask as well.
Just out of curiosity, what's the diameter of the cylinder?
The cylinder is 8 inches. Thereabouts. Yeah, it's a large cylinder. This one's large as well. So
7/16 on range, quite a variance.
Yes.
yeah, it is. It is. I think the most important thing that we need to discover is really what the root cause is, and Catherine and I have spoken about this. Figuring out the root cause. And now, the ground shifted, and from what they're saying, it's creating pressure against that cylinder, which moved it.
Okay, so the cylinder is 60, the base is 60 feet under the ground.
Oh,
Okay, so that's what could have shifted.
right, well, we know that the bottom is still in place. The bottom and the top are perfectly aligned. Okay, but there's a bow in the middle. So,
Is this elevator part of the original building or the, okay, so it's not the building of 4 years ago?
No, but it was redone.
it was
4 years ago.
New and improved.
this, what we're talking about, so they replaced this jack assembly 3.5 years ago, three years ago.
Mhm.
And we've had a catastrophic failure with it.
Okay, so if it is seismic, and another question is what kind of, safe, what kind of things can we do to protect it from another? So,
That's right.
Or, maybe you said this and I didn't hear it, if there's pressure against it, are they going to clean that pressure out before they put the tubing back down?
And that's another question, right? So there are, with that $98,000, what you need to understand is that there are some things there that are recovered. And some of the questions I was asking was, if you replace the PVC casing, does that mean all the sand that's around it, is that gonna fall in? Now, 3.5 years ago, when that cylinder was installed and they removed the old one, there was contaminated soil because back in the 70s, they never used to, it was basically a steel cylinder, surrounded by dirt. Of course, you know, when you're that deep, you have groundwater and things rusted out. And then code required all cylinders below grade to be encased in PVC with appropriate waterproofing measures around the steel itself to prevent corrosion. Okay. So my questions really are, you know, so the things that aren't included would be bringing in Clean Harbors or another company that would back out all of that material. What also is included in that price is if we have to re-drill that hole. If there's something that shifted, and there's stone or something putting pressure up against that cylinder, is it possible that that needs to be drilled? Yes, it is. Anyways, when I was talking with Kathy from Stanley Elevator on Monday, going over the proposal that she had sent, she wasn't able to clarify some of this. That's why she is coming with the maintenance, the new regional manager who took over for Ken. He's the one that I've been dealing with up until this point, and they're gonna be coming to answer these questions that we have. So.
Well, I think that's good. I mean, we do have we have the funding to cover and their pricing's underneath that. So anything above and beyond that you need to have done, hopefully comes within that, because right now you've got $32,000 left if I do my math right and change.
hopefully there isn't something else that could have caused.
Right, yeah, so, one of the things I was talking with Catherine about it yesterday was, I had reached out to a local contractor, and, I was toying with the idea of sending, so have you ever seen cameras that plumbers use for inspecting drains? I had thought about bringing them in to send a camera down, to see if there's any visible damage that we could see. So on the wall.
City of Keene has a sewer one. You might go more there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
So like a colonoscopy.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
The bigger thing.
Yeah. More. I'm not sure.
Never mind.
So, we have reached out to Primex. if it was an earthquake or some sort of seismic shift, would something like this be covered?
So is it something, could it be something that shifted here and just pushing up against it and blowing it?
And that's possible.
And then if that were the case, would this thing have enough, work to bounce back that 7-6 feet?
And that
That's
is,
what
that
you-
is my question, right? I mean, if, and what I've said was, when you start talking about, now, I understand it's steel, but when you start,
Oh, it's got a little flexibility.
it has flexibility to it, right? If you were to go to the center, it doesn't take much force really to move anything. I mean, everything
Everything
moves.
is actually 7/32, because it's half.
Right, so it doesn't take a lot of force to move something in the center, okay? Regardless of what it is, I mean, the one thing that was communicated to me the other day was that test that Stanley performed, is inconclusive and it wasn't adequate. So, again, I had priced out from the local contractor, what it would cost to slow the camera down and get a video of it. I can't promise that we're gonna see anything, but, at least we're making an attempt, to ascertain what kind of damage we're talking about, because the problem is once we start pulling that cylinder, we're altering it, right? Because as they're pulling this thing out, they're taking it apart. And at that point, at least from an insurance perspective, they're gonna say, well, it's altered, it's not, how can we? So.
Do you have to put a camera down the cylinder or do you? put
Well,
the
that's what I was thinking about doing. I mean, if, taking a sewer camera, it has a light on the end of it. The one thing that I was concerned about was the height, if there's any hydraulic oil. And the contractor that I spoke with thought that the camera would be able to see through it, because originally we were talking about if there was a way that we could pump the remaining hydraulic oil out of that cylinder. But hydraulic, as you know, hydraulic oil is pretty clear. And he thinks that we're gonna be able to see through it, we're gonna be able to measure it, we'll know exactly just how deep that thing is. And we might not see damage, but we might, and he'll provide that video on the thumb drive.
So two things. One is, Jack had to leave, but he did like the camera idea. He texted me right before. He said, I really like sending a camera down and to really try to understand what occurred. And then the other thing, what was the other thing? Is, Primex. So, we're still dealing with this through Primex. Would they pay for any of this for us trying to find out what the issue is? Is there any opportunity, let me just, would
So we
pay for building inspector to evaluate the shaft or something like that?
don't know, so we had Travelers Insurance, the inspector from Travelers Insurance who works on behalf of Primex out here the other day. And we were looking at we were trying to find, the scratches in the cylinder. They are there, unfortunately, they have the cylinder, the pistons out of the cylinder. They're quite long, they're strapped up against the side of the elevator shaft. And we weren't able to get up high enough to find that. I do have pictures of the scratches that formed on the first breakdown that we had when they came in and pulled everything apart and put it all back together. So to your point, when Todd came in the other day, I didn't ask him if they would pay for that, but I will. What he was indicating was that, insurance companies really only pay for the damaged part. Right? So they might not be looking at a jack assembly, they might be looking at the second section to it. And that's another question that I have for Stanley, on Friday, is it possible if we do find damage between one of the sections, is it possible to replace that section? Ultimately, the goal is to have something that is gonna stand the test of time.
Maybe it's not
Yeah, and
that,
the bottom line is if I can get Primex to pay for anything, I'll be happy.
Maybe it's
So-
not, maybe it's not damage at all, but if you have a static boulder down here, you get dislodged because of some seismic event, it's pushing up
And I
against.
thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I thought once you dislodge that, you know, so what they had done was Stanley quoted out a brand new jack assembly. That will be a question. Why couldn't you use it after inspection, after you pull this thing out? And you look at it and you deem it to be, or even reaching out to the manufacturer and saying, can you send a representative out to look at this jack assembly to see if it's, you know, reasonable to reuse, right? Again, going back to, going back to the camera, the inspector wouldn't use, the spider test that they did. He didn't think that it was a valid test. I thought that at least if we made the attempt with the camera, before Stanley alters anything,
Yeah.
and if we can see some damage.
Well, now,
To your point.
but now that you have us all curious, would you be willing, sorry with Catherine, if you find any more information, just to join us on via Zoom, to just update us on any, whether it's next Wednesday or the following Wednesday, anything that you feel is relevant to the
Absolutely.
story that you told here today, because I know that now we're all wanting to know why did it happen in the first place?
And that has been,
And we may never know, but at least we at least can be told we'll never know.
so,
Okay,
sure.
all right. Is there anything else that you have?
No,
You had the upcoming project.
yeah, the upcoming projects is just cleaning out the red barn, just to go over this, cleaning out, storage to accommodate ALF belongings. Painting an ALF, really, it's like living, we want to get in there, get a nice, first coat of paint for the new floor, new cabinets and the ceiling. Like I said, completing the SBCC plan, that is, the site visit's been done, we're just waiting for the report. That will be filed with, the state, and then we'll have to think about that for another 5 years.
So as long as there's no like real liability, then maybe okay to get rid of that stuff out on the street.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, and, like I said, it's gonna save money, it's gonna repurpose items, everything that this community is about.
And while they're at it, if anybody wants a huge, concrete or 6 concrete, what are those big?
Catch basins.
Catch basins.
Oh, geez.
Or you want one though. I think you have a project coming up that you want one, but if we can get rid of the rest of them, just having trees and stuff grow within them, I'd be really happy.
Yeah, just one other thing I just wanted to point out, just super quickly, we had, a former facility staff, member come back on per diem this summer. He just did a fantastic job with the grounds. He did all the work up at the newly discovered cemetery. And he spent quite a bit of time down at, the garden down here, and cleaning things up, and he just did a magnificent job around the facility. I just wanted to let you know, so
Mhm.
Very nice report, thank you.
you're welcome.
No, we tell him it's okay, because it's his first time kind of thing, kind of.
There was no jig, sorry.
All right, I'm gonna keep moving on if that's all right. Thank you very much.
Don't find anything more.
Yeah.
I don't.
I'm going to move on to master agenda item number 1200, transfer of funds. Just want to talk to discuss and vote on transfer of funds left over from county generator project to pay for signs in the county hall. Start off with, as you remember, the generator, we at the end of the day, there was a savings about 40 some odd $1,000. And that's just there at this point, in the fund balance. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cheryl, but, we've had a project that's been going on since, I think Rod, who's on today, has joined us, was working on, and back in the day, and we had it working with, we tried to work with the state of New Hampshire's prison system to get our signage throughout all our buildings, downtown on our Keene campus, and just wasn't to come to be. We found that, they just didn't get back to us. I mean, months would go by. even though we have emails of multiple emails, months would go by without them getting back to us. And I just think that they don't have enough staffing to meet the needs, for any level of ability to get the work done. So we actually have a bailiff that works, within the system we found that does this stuff on the side. We, because we priced it out all over the place back when Rod was here. And, we came up with, the ability to get all of these done. But what we also added in there were some signage, let's just start with, as you've seen the finance office. So the finance office, we want to have consistency in our signage throughout the whole building. So the sheriff's department, the county attorney's department, and even delegation hall, we have some signage. And then also, the elevated directory that we have right now, we would update. So that it's just more consistent. This is what we've tried to do all along. So, what we would be suggesting is that the rooms in numbers in department lettering is more than what we had in the budget alone. We only had like $2,000 in there. So that's $6,106. And then we would, the finance department's already been purchased. So the sheriff's department, the county attorney's office, delegation hall, and elevated directory would tune out to about $11,095. Now it is $11,095. So that's how we would move forward, and we would ask that we be allowed to move from one cost center. And if we have the number, I think we have the numbers for the cost centers, where we'd be moving them from the generator fund. That would still leave us with about about $33,000 left over from the project. And so we would move forward and just get this signage done. This has been like a 5-year or 4-year venture that we've tried to get this done and labeled. And it does, it's for 2 reasons. One is for fire. The numbers are for fire. When they come in, they know what number, everything's labeled. And then the second one is, it happens all the time. People are looking for offices, can't find the offices, because we don't have any identification of that it's my office, or if it's IT, or if it's so we just want to upgrade those a bit more. So
Where would that be?
that'd be right in the foyer downstairs.
To the left of the.
There's something there, yeah. There's something there's, yeah.
So if I can just, I guess, also comment, really all we're looking for is, these are rolled over funds, even the generator money. And so it's not going to change the account number. It's just you giving permission to utilize some of the unspent county hall generator funds to finish up this signage project that needs probably about $11,000.
Okay, so you need what? Four of these?
No, one of those,
One for the sheriff, one for the.
county attorney, and then one for county hall. And that's happened, and this one wasn't on my radar, but do you know how many times, in a month's period, I'm looking for delegation hall, and they just don't have an idea or where, they're upstairs and they don't know that that's where it is,
So we need 3 or 4 of those.
Yeah, yeah.
So the difference in the price is the gold leaf.
No, we don't do gold leaf. Gold leaf would be,
Those estimated prices, we're going with the.
we're going with the 535, not the, no. No, yeah, we're going with the 535 for the sheriff, 535 for the county attorneys, 535, the delegation's 1,255, and then the elevated directory.
Cool.
Okay,
That's nice.
can I have a motion to be able to move that forward?
So move. Second.
All right, Commissioner England and Commissioner Clark, thank you. All right, is that good enough for you, Cheryl? Alrighty, thank you. Next on the agenda is, Rod, is that good enough for you too?
Don't forget my 10% though, okay?
In my 10%, yeah. Yeah, it's in the mail, check's in the mail. Yeah. So next up is my report, so I'll get right to it. First and foremost, Friday, New Hampshire Association and County has their monthly meeting at Primex. I'll be there at 9 o'clock or 9:30 for the leadership meeting, then at 10 o'clock is the executive committee, and then 11:30, they have the UNH cooperative extension contract signing. Where they have I think the governor's coming in to sign this off, and so it's just something they do on a semi-regular basis, and so this is the year to do it. And we go from there, and so there probably usually is some level of food afterwards, but who knows?
So that's where they want the photo op.
Yeah.
Catherine and I will probably be going, for the 10:30 meeting.
Davis and I are planning on going to. Unless something comes up that I'm not aware of.
Presuming for Catherine, that the inspectors do not show up in these next 2 days.
Which could happen in any moment.
Yes.
So they are due, so. Just so you know, and, we had our meeting with, Homeland Security Director last week, Buxton. To continue our conversation pertaining to, the BRIC grant that we're pursuing so that Southwest Fire Mutual Aid, can upgrade its system in the community. We, actually, it was a really good meeting. He's surprised that a county is as proactive as we are and wants to do some things, which I'll get to in a second. So Southwest Regional Planning, I asked Todd Horner, Executive Director of Southwest Regional Planning Commission, to be there too. Because if we are going forward with the plan around developing and adopting all towns in the city of Keens plan, emergency mitigation plan, then they need to be, some of them don't have them, some of them need to be updated, and then other people have them and they're updated. So we just need to get that, I'll help them, and there are grants out there that allows that. So Todd's working on a proposal because we're going back up on the 19th, I believe. Zoom, we have to Zoom with Buxton again, and he'll present his proposal there where we can start moving forward to see if we can get some money so that Todd can start working on the project. I may come back to you too and just say the monies we set aside this year for that emergency director's position, if we could utilize a portion of that to help them get off the ground so they can start working in the towns, that may be another way we do it. And again, if we don't do anything, the towns that receive this service, which is every single town in the city of Keene, would see a 350 to 400% increase in what they're paying into Southwest Fire Mutual Aid, because they would have to take a bond out to take care of all the infrastructure, or we could go into complete crisis and there would be no service and people would be at risk. So there's not really a lot you can do about it.
Well, that's perfect, because we don't think the government ought to be involved.
Yeah. So, but what came out of it was an interesting discussion. They were bouncing back and forth, about this, should we, should we have a position? Could Southwest Regional Planning Commission be the position? And they're talking back and forth, and I just threw out the idea of why couldn't we partner with Homeland Security and instead of having our representation in Concord, why couldn't we have it in Cheshire County, in Keene? Why couldn't we house it? We pay 50, they pay 50. And because then you have somebody that knows the community, knows the players in the community. This day and age of thinking that the 100-year rain happens every 100 years, it happens every other Tuesday. And the damage that we've seen in this town alone, in Swansea in the last year and other places, is only going to continue. If we have somebody on the ground, that's going to help those towns. You need to remember what we learned with COVID. It's that a lot of towns don't have the administrative capabilities. He loved the idea. He thought it was.
I think Keene has one, but I've not heard of any other ones.
Emergency director that they have is Court Blomquist. It still is.
Is he still?
It's still.
Okay.
I know that for a fact. And
that was only part of his.
That was part of, he was public works director.
Yeah, it was only part of his portfolio, so how really involved was he in it anyway?
Yeah. But they have it, and when, you know, when something hits, when they have flooding or something, they pull together the EOC or ECO, whatever, Emergency Center, whatever. And they, you know, that's where they work, so, so that they really like that. So what I did is I came back, I met with Don Bliss over the phone. We put together some thoughts. He got it back to me on Tuesday. I met with Adam Caseta, our local attorney that we utilize. Also got the template for the, or working with the sheriff to get the template to contracts, MOU contracts we have with the towns, and also I'm gonna get the cooperative extension contract, so Adam can take a look at the information we give him and the contracts, put a contract together so that we can then send it up to the director to see if this is something that his legals then can take apart, add their stuff in. But I wanna at least give them something to start working on. And so that happened, it came together really quickly. So we'll send that off by Friday and go from there. But, and just see if this is something that makes sense or not. But I like the idea of having our own person here in Cheshire County when crisis hits. Because it's going to, and there's a litany of things that we've listed out, which we'll go through with you, what they are, they can do for communities. To better serve the community so that they're better prepared moving forward. So it's still a draft and we're still looking at it, but it could be something that works well. I met with the city manager on Tuesday and had a great conversation. Talked about a multitude of things. It was initially a meeting with Luca pertaining some projects that we're doing through the chamber. And then it got on to some of the stuff that we're doing. And at the end, she and I just talked. And I did tell her that, you know, that at some point, you know, we will have a conversation. She said, at some point, is the county going to charge us for services? And I said, yes. And I said, what that final number is going to be is yet to be determined, but I think we're getting closer to what that's going to be. And she said, that's good to know because I need to factor that into everything that we're doing here. She also wasn't aware, I think she was aware that we're in the city to the level, you know, a lot of times you'll see on Facebook, the professional firefighters, they promote, you know, they do a great job of really promoting, you know, their needs and their concerns. And everybody's out of the house, they're in empty house. But a lot of times when that happens, we're in the city. So we're probably close to 150 times in the city. And by the end of the year, probably closer to 200 times, which is good. This is why we're here. This is why we were put in place in the first place. So I think that was helpful for her too. And I think it was really a good conversation. You know, we're looking at the possibility of working with her in applying for a Northern Borders grant.
Is she any closer to backing off on her? You don't have a strong financial plan?
No, I think the reality is that I was very truthful with her, is that the reality is our billing rates are above and beyond what our projections were. Our receipts, Medicare, Medicaid, and private, what they're paying us isn't matching up with what, and so that's the problem. That's where the problem lays. And I was very upfront with her. I said, this is what we're doing though. We met, you know, when we were in Tampa, we met with the national officials to work with Republicans and Democrats on both sides to say, Medicare needs to be here. It's here. It needs to be here for these type of services because, I mean, last week I got a call from Merrimack County. They want to come down and look at what we did here. Why is that? Not because they want to like us. We didn't want to either, but because some of the private ambulance services up in that area are failing or are in trouble. So they're trying to come up with a plan on how to make this work. You know, what role should they play in? And they would like he said, can you come up and talk to us? I said, no, I want you to come down and see what we've done. Because it doesn't make sense for us to be talking about what it is when they could be meeting and hearing and seeing.
She's better understanding it, so she's not going to be as adamant, you know, bringing it up.
Well, no, but right, but any work that she sees we're doing is going to benefit them. They have an $8 million Keene Fire and rescue, budget.
But it comes out of.
It's, if
property
we,
tax.
I don't know, you're right, and I don't, I'm not sitting here saying the work we're doing, if we're able to get, Medicare to bump up its rate, then we can argue with the state that Medicaid should be where Medicare is, and then we can also argue with the state that the private should be at least paying that, if not more. And so if we can get but this is the first ball that needs to drop, and so it's just, and she sees that because it won't mean that taxes, that $8 million department will go down, but maybe it will slow the increase towards 8.5 million or whatever it is, or maybe it does make it go down, who knows? But all we care about is, and it affects all the other privates out there too. Because the system is failing. It's not like it's going to fail, it is failing. You can just see that because of how many ambulance services have failed in the last 3 to 5 years. And it's not because of mismanagement, but I think it's what it is, it's the system as a whole, but it's also not people haven't been telling the story because maybe they're embarrassed but it's a system. It's not, in my world, when I look at it, it's not mismanagement. It's telling the story, and we just have to tell the story truthfully, to people.
With the pieces that put together, the system is just not sustainable.
Yeah. I mean, if you include everything we've done this year, from wheelchair service, and supporting that, to the interfacility transfers, to the 911 contracts, we're about 17,000 trips in. I mean, that's pretty amazing what we've done in a year's, truly in a year's time. It's felt like 30 years, but it's really, this is our first full year. So, but it was a good meeting, and we are gonna continue to have that conversation. Dan has asked, and we put together a email, and we're gonna be sending it out, that we bring the delegation together, an EMS committee, that we talk about where things are in the funding, so they can hear the story too, and understand what our approach is going to be moving forward. And so it's really good, because I think we've come up with a good plan on how to move forward, and not just short term, but long term. And so that meeting will be, we're gonna be sending it out on the 23rd.
30th now.
Oh, 30th, okay. On the 30th at 10 a.m. So. Already talked about that. This weekend is the Keene Sentinel's 225th birthday. There's all kinds of functionings happening in Keene downtown. If you remember, the Latches parking lot will be a staging area, a stage where they'll have musicians playing. They'll have other events going on down there too. Throughout the day, they've suckered myself and Eli into playing into some celebrity softball game that I'm just hoping I don't embarrass myself too much by not being able to hit the softball, because I haven't lifted a bat in years. But more importantly, running the bases, all of a sudden, something pops. And I said, maybe we should have an ambulance out there just in case. So I'm looking at, if this committee goes the way it needs to go, that it will meet probably twice. And then we will meet with the towns. And what I'm hoping to do is instead of going town by town, have the towns come in, like the 911 contracts, have them come in and talk to them about what we're doing. Then the next night, have the towns that we do backup for come in and talk to them and move forward from there. Because it's just, it would just take too long if I go town by town by town. I don't know if you heard, but SAU 29 was cyber attacked. So they had $2.1 million that went away, but it looks that it was a bank issue, that somebody didn't go through the certification process that they have there, or the signage issues, whatever it is, that's what it looks like. It looks like they're gonna get a portion of that back, and we'll see. So there's that, and
Yeah, they weren't sure about the 800,000.
yeah. I'm looking at for new and old, and anyone that's reelected. An orientation, we're looking at 2 days. We haven't set the dates yet, but the 2 days would be traveling day, the first day, so you do the DOC, then the nursing home. And then the second day would be probably right before the meeting on the second Monday of December, when the commissioners bring their budget forward. And we'd meet early in the day and people could come in and we'd have dinner and stuff, and then they could go to the meeting. Just for all the other departments to report out there. Just a reminder that we're in budget season, so we'll be starting that process in October for you all. And Cheryl and I will get dates to you sooner than later, and you know, probably by mid-September-ish. Next, remember, very important, next Saturday, 1 o'clock, in the Nanac Regional High School. We have the, no, the 14th, the 14th.
Okay.
We have the graduation at Nanac Regional High School, or not the graduation, the swearing in for the EMS program.
1 o'clock.
Yeah. Got JoJo Mead singing the national anthem. We've got a bagpiper, we've got the whole work, so it's good. The New Hampshire ambulance cost study, we've been notified, I've been asked to sit on the committee for that. It's gonna be Zoom. The Commissioner of Insurance reached out to me, Bettencourt, who we've sat on committees in the past in reference to the study that Representative Hunt had asked to be put forward around the true cost of an ambulance service and how, you know, what the debt ratio is compared to what, you know, because there's a lot of convenience stories, and the reality is that people just aren't, it's not paying enough. It's not that our rates are off. It's not, it's just that, and everybody keeps always swearing that they want you to get in network. And the problem with in network is that they don't, what that means is, like with Anthem, we would be in network with Anthem and they dictate the rates. And Anthem's already at some points, they're paying less than Medicaid. And that's wrong. They, you know, so, if you remember the opiate settlements, MCVP, Representative Rhodes asked that I look at, the Nanac Center for Violence Prevention to see if they had any needs around the opiate settlement money. I met with their director. And I said that if they were interested in if they could meet the criteria, and I showed him what the criteria was, and he's going to put together a letter of what he believes, because they're dealing with many individuals who loved ones are dealing with this issue, and because of that, they're in their programming.
What, 135?
Oh, we've got over 200,000 still. And so, I did tell him that wouldn't be available until next year because we've already gone through our process this year. Also that Cheryl did put together the letter and sent to the state that you heard Catherine talk about. And in that letter, we outline where we're sending our monies. So, and I'm wondering, it's weird that Catherine said it was late. We always send it about this time this year because we always do it after the August meeting. And I think that's about it. I mean, the handyman update, I told you about what we're doing there. And Northern Borders, I already said that that's what we're looking at there. So that's it. Is there any old business? Any new business? Consent agenda item, vote to accept the weekly manifest and minutes of August 21st, 2024.
So move.
Second,
Yeah, I haven't seen you.
trust me, he did a great job and made me cry a little bit. I got to put on. Commissioner England, Commissioner Clark. All right, calendar, is anything there?
Just October 2nd,
Okay.
canceling.
And that's the Laconia, where we've been invited to Laconia to hear a presentation, so that's why we're doing it that day. There is no, I mean, unless you have general discussion, for commissioners, I don't know of any non-public sessions. There is none today. And then, so motion to adjourn.
So move, sir.
All right, Commissioner England,
Aye.
and Commissioner Clark. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.
See ya.
Do you have a minute just to hang in here to call Sarah Canal quickly?
Yeah,
She wants to, she's sorry she couldn't come down earlier. She just wants to talk about the photographer, among a couple other things.
okay. All right, yeah.
Yeah, I'll call her now.
Who's coming down? Does that include us?
No, this is just Chris here.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Hey, Chris,
Yeah,
are you sort of at a lull or are you wrapping up?
we're done.
Oh, okay.
We are still recording, Doug, so heads up.
Have a good day.
All right.
You too.
Well, this
Thank you.
isn't, it's not non-public, but